This is In Between Them, a podcast where we uncover what it really felt like to be a child of divorce. I am Shannon Darrow, and each episode brings honest stories from brave adults who lived through this as children. This is In Between Them. Let's get going.
Well, hi, Courtney. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate you taking the time to do this.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to chat.
Of course. I want to start just by asking a little bit, just tell me where you are at now. I know that you grew up in California, but you're not there now. So just give me a little bit of where things are at before you kind of take me back into your story.
Okay. So, yes, born and raised in Southern California. And now I am in Northwest Arkansas in the Ozarks. Moved here at the end of 2017 to get out of California to raise my kids somewhere else. Met my husband in Los Angeles in 2011, I think it was. I don't even remember, 2010. And so we've been married for 13 years. And so he's born and raised in Southern California as well. So I dragged him and the kids and we all came here. And it's been great. It's been a definitely better change of pace.
I mean, you can't get much more different than California to Arkansas.
Definitely different in so many ways. And I think overall, I'm sure we'll touch on it, but being raised in Southern California was great. And I never imagined leaving. But after I had children, my husband and I both decided like we wanted to give them something that we never had. And so it was a big deal for us to find somewhere where we could really put roots down and stay long term and have the time to spend with our kids.
Yeah.
Because obviously California, it's a rat race and you're
Yeah.
working constantly. And so it was nice to have a chance to do that and set that up for our family because it was
Yeah.
something both of us kind of missed growing up.
Well, I mean, you know, I grew up in Southern California too, and I'm in Oregon. And when I go back and I land and I get into the airport, my heart just starts to race.
You
And
feel
I,
it.
yeah. And I just, similar to you, I'm like here raising a kid in a different way than I grew up. And it's amazing how you didn't feel that intensity when we
Mm-mm.
lived there. I mean, you did, but not in the way that now it's like overwhelming. And I think, how can people do this every day? But I don't think they know.
I don't think you really kind of understand until you get out of it. And in the same way, like when you get there, you feel it. But it really hits me when I come back to Arkansas. The minute I land, I can feel
Yes.
Air feels different.
Yes.
I mean, it is different. It's cleaner,
Yeah.
but you just can slow down and take a breath.
Mhm.
And looking back, I think we probably always knew that. And everything felt busy and fast. I can only imagine now compared to when, back then raising kids or growing up in that now would be even worse. But it felt like you're on a very fast escalator all the time.
Mhm. Constantly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think I'm going to die when I'm on the freeway every time because I'm like, what? Did I really drive 90 everywhere I went?
Everywhere and in traffic.
Yeah. It's
And cut
amazing.
people off. Like
I
how
know.
it's shocking now. I laugh because wide open roads and this and that. And
I know.
I get scared every time I'm thinking, oh, I'm supposed to go back there next year to see family. And I was like, how will I handle this?
I
can't-
know. And people probably
parking.
Yeah. People would probably listen to us and be like, what the heck is wrong with you guys? Because you just don't have a clue when you're in it that it's
No,
so fast paced, you know?
it's definitely, you're always living in survival.
Yeah.
And the worry of what's next. You can't really plan. I mean, some people can, they're probably great at it, but planning for the future or just the things that we had growing up, like the house I grew up in, I could never give that to my kids now. Like it, with how much everything's gotten crazy.
Yeah. That's not to say there aren't amazingly wonderful things in California.
I do. I was telling someone last night, I miss the food. I miss the palm trees. Ryan
Well,
really misses
pumping
surfing.
rain today, I'm like, oh gosh.
I miss earthquakes.
Yes. Yeah.
I
Oh, my
do.
goodness.
Yeah, I miss there's a lot of stuff in Arkansas. There's a handful of things in Arkansas that I could do without, like ticks and mosquitoes and
Oh, yeah.
tornadoes. But otherwise, and allergies, but otherwise it's great.
Good choice. Good choice.
Yes.
Well, let's get into this since I know that you have a busy life otherwise. I just want to thank you again for joining me to share your story and just want to ask you to kind of take me back to how old you were when your parents got divorced. Um, and how were you aware of that transition? What did that transition look like for you from kind of prior to then when things shifted and how you kind of became aware of like, okay, my life is different now?
I had a really interesting experience because I was in 5th grade when my parents actually got divorced. But looking back, I don't know if I should start there and then go back. I'll start there. So I got in 5th grade is when they actually got divorced and sold the house and we moved. And that moment in time for me, it was right in the middle of 5th grade. I was 10, I think. And all I remember from the day specifically is I what it felt like and how my brain remembers it is I woke up. My mom put me in our Astro van. It was a maroon Astro van, and she and I got on the freeway and drove to Texas because that's where my mom moved, my brother and to be closer to her family. And it was so traumatic, and I remember screaming at my mom and crying and, like, pretty much throwing this major meltdown on the freeway. Looking back, now as a parent, I can only imagine how hard that was for her. Um, but we left my brother behind too because he was gonna be able to spend the last couple weeks of his, I guess he was in 7th grade at the time, year with his friends, and then he was going to fly out to Texas to be with us. So I had to leave him behind, and I literally felt like I had everything ripped out from underneath me, and I felt like it was super sudden, and it was very traumatic. But going back, I remember that my parents put our house for sale. I remember people open houses. I remember at school someone said, "We came and looked at your house this weekend. You're selling your house." I remember the sign going up out front. I remember my dad had moved into an apartment during this time right before we moved, and I remember spending time at that apartment. I can remember what it looks like. I remember the beige couch he had. It's weird because I remember those things, but I almost disassociated them from each other because looking back, I can remember that. At that moment, it felt like I'd never been told any of this. I had to have seen.
Was no one telling you why the house was listed or why dad had an apartment, or do you just not recall
I don't
any?
remember. I
Wow.
don't remember if I just blacked it out and to, you know, like, that was my way of dealing with it. I'm not sure. They had to have. They had to. I remember don't re that's the weird thing. Within my household, I don't remember the house getting packed up. It had to have been. It was a huge house. My mom was very meticulous. So, like, I had to have remembered that. I had to have seen it happening
Do you
around me.
think that feels so abrupt to just
Very.
all of a sudden be traveling to Texas, but do you think like, my thought was to say, "Why did your mom do it that way?" But then maybe you actually knew and don't remember, so it made more sense, but because of the way it unfolded, it seems like that was the instance because obviously uprooting your entire 5th grade self is a massive traumatic event,
Mhm.
even if you have prior knowledge that it's happening, you know? But do you think that your mom was kind of in her own world, like, "I just have to do this," or have you ever had conversation about that instance since?
I don't know if we ever have. My mom is not someone who communicates openly. You can talk to her about anything, but she's not someone who actively engages in deep conversations about like this kind of stuff. She'll talk to you
Yeah.
all day about other things. So I just feel my mom's whole side of the family does not communicate openly in, it's just not their style. I don't think I ever did ask her as an adult or anything, not that I remember. I can only imagine I knew. I had to have known. I had to have been told
Mhm.
because I'm sure I have older brothers as well and friends and family. I'm sure we said goodbye to everyone. My aunt was still in California. I'm sure there were goodbyes. I am sure there was a lead up to this.
Mhm.
Other than just those little things I remember. I'm sure I went and saw my dad's apartment because that's where he'd be living after we moved to Texas. I can only think that that's what was said and done. I just don't know why I maybe because it was the way I processed it, 'cause it was
Yeah.
so abrupt to
Well,
me.
it shows you the power of your brain.
Yeah.
And imagine other things that are happening to kids when they're young and they just block it. I mean, it really does show you that when something is uncomfortable as a kid, you just you forget it. You
Yeah.
can't pull it up, and that's really fascinating.
And honestly, like, from everything I can remember, like, that was the most traumatic thing. I had a pretty great childhood from what I can remember, that was the most traumatic thing that I can recall, like, that moment was so traumatic
Mhm.
for me.
Yeah.
I've had other really scary things happen, like, I was attacked by my friend's dog in the face. I remember every moment of that.
Yeah.
I don't
Interesting.
remember, yet but even tracking back, like and it was weird. I don't think I was I've never been the kid that was like, "I wish my parents would get back together." I never wished that. I don't even think it was more of the wish they weren't getting divorced or we were moving out of that house. I think it was the abruptness of, like, it's just and now I'm far away
Yeah.
because I look back and when I was preschool age 2, 3, my mom left my dad for the first time, and she moved us to Arkansas. 'Cause this is where my mom
Wow.
grew up, and so we used to come to Arkansas every summer to visit my grandma and stay on the farm that my mom grew up on in the middle of nowhere, and it was beautiful, and it was great. Well, we would come and spend a couple months, 6, 7 weeks here, and then drive back. So, but in that summer, or I guess spring, I was 2 or 3, we got here, and I do remember being enrolled in preschool here. I also vaguely remember I'll have to ask if this is an actual memory or if I made it up, but I remember being very emotional. I didn't like it, and they had to bring my brother in to see me because I didn't want to be away
Well,
from my
you're
mom.
3. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was that kid. I was very much like my youngest is now. I was that Velcro kid to my mom. I didn't wanna be away. I didn't wanna be around strangers. I was like she said I would put my finger in her clothing and, like, wrap it around so, knot it up at all times. I
Isn't
had to
that
be
good?
touching her at all times. So, I was like that. So, I remember being in a preschool class. I remember that summer. I remember my dad coming out and visiting, and then we ended up going home. And so I remember telling my kindergarten teacher, "I hope my parents get divorced one day." Like it so it's like I didn't grow up in an unhappy house. I didn't grow up in a house I've never seen my parents fight. I've never seen them yell at each other. Um,
That's
they didn't
super fascinating, though, to have had that experience young, and then obviously and I'm sure that's not abnormal that, you know, when people know that things are not happy or not,
Yeah.
you know, cogent, then you're very aware that my parents aren't happy and you a lot of times think it's coming, but to have had that happen so young and then, 7 years essentially later, how much do you think you were aware if they weren't people that argued and weren't people that fought? Like, what did you think of their marriage when obviously they had a rocky time the whole time?
Yeah, it's strange because I remember that them being apart for that one period of time. I remember so it's weird because, like, my parents, they didn't fight, they didn't talk bad about each other. Looking back, the only way I can, like, describe it is they were, like, a really good working partnership, business I mean, they also
Yeah.
were in business together. They owned a business together, so they were around each
Um,
other all the time. It was just I don't know, it just felt like it functioned. It just
yeah.
functioned. I had a happy childhood. I had a very calm existence, like, my house was like, it was truly a place that, like, I wanted to be. There was nothing uncomfortable. My brother and I feel like we had a very normal upbringing, but I remember my dad's so we had a large home, and so upstairs there were 4 rooms. My brother and I had a room across from each other, and we had this large bonus room that TV, and it had a pull-out couch and stuff, and then down the hall was my parents' master bedroom, and for probably a year before they actually got divorced, my dad slept in that other room.
Mm.
So, I you know,
With conversation about why or just dad was sleeping in there? No.
I think it was just dad was sleeping in there. I don't think from what I can remember, I don't think I thought much about it
Yeah.
other than like, it's strange because knowing that I said that to my kindergarten teacher and then I wasn't the kid that thought, oh, they need to be together. It was, I don't know. It to me, that's I think it was just the way it was.
Yeah.
So, and there was no like friction in the household where it was like there wasn't that tension, right? Like,
Which is probably a gift in a lot of ways because granted, they were missing something that you didn't
yeah,
see, but at the same time, you weren't living in this turmoil, which
yeah,
people are. So, which also might have led to you not being super aware of we're selling our house and what is actually coming, or maybe it made it easier to just kind of block that out because it wasn't like these knockdown drag out fights that was heightening everyone's emotions and then all this stuff is happening after that, you know? So take me to you're now in Texas
hmm
and your brother's not with you. It's you and your mom. What happens after that?
we moved into a rental home and we right outside of Dallas in a place called Rockwall. And we moved into a small little rental home with our dog, a golden retriever. So weird, like the little things I can vividly remember. He was a golden retriever. His name was Buddy, and he had an Alf doll, like a stuffed Alf doll. I think it might have been mine or something that he ended up adopting, and that he kept that thing for years. Had it all, and I remember it snowed pretty quickly after we got there. I remember it being kind of fun. Our back porch turned into almost like an ice skating rink. So I remember like all these new experiences. We were now near my mom's brother, my Uncle Tom, and his wife and kids. So I remember spending time with them. I do remember the house being full of like moving boxes and stuff. Um, and we had to have been getting ready for Christmas because then my brother joined us before school started. So I'm sure my brother was with us for Christmas. I don't remember that Christmas. Did we even leave? Gosh, I'd even have to see the timing of that. Did he get to stay and spend all of finish 5th grade? I might have to think about the timing of that. Maybe we did Christmas and then moved. I don't know. I just remember being in the middle of 5th grade and my brother got to stay. Maybe he's finished his year and then came in the summer. Nope. No, because we came back for the summer. Sorry, I'm getting off track. So I remember being there. I remember the house. And then my mom bought a lot in this Guarded Gate community. It's a yacht club community. And she built her dream home from the ground up. And it was a beautiful home. And, I got to help her pick out a few things in it. And, then when my brother was there, I mean, we moved into that. Didn't take, gosh, it all actually went up really fast because we were in that pretty quickly. And then obviously before summer because we came back for the summer to see my dad. And I do remember hating school because I didn't fit in. They would make fun of me because I didn't say y'all and I didn't have an accent. And I would get in trouble for saying yes or no and not answering yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. And there were quite a few really nice girls that took me under their wing and kind of tried to show me the ropes. But I do remember that's probably one of the very first times I felt like such a fish out of water. I was just not in my didn't have my family, didn't have my friends, didn't have my environment. My gosh, not think this to make me emotional. I loved my 5th grade teacher in California. I'm still friends with her to this day. She was
Wow.
such a huge I think she probably knew more about my family, what was going on than I did because it was her first year teaching. It was Miss Gins. I don't know if you remember her or have seen her around all the years. I know um she's like on my social media and stuff. She's wonderful. I still call her that. She really just like nurtured me a lot that year. So she had to have known I missed her, I missed that class.
Yeah.
Um, and I think I really started to rebel like big time. Like, because in Texas, they had nothing to do other than get in trouble. So thankfully I had a good head on my shoulders, so I didn't go crazy. But like it was 5th grade, these kids were like drinking and smoking and
Wow.
shocking to me because I was like, I'd never even seen this stuff. So I remember I tried smoking, got really sick. I think my mom found out about that. It was like, this is what happens. I do feel for the first time that was the first time everything felt like it was falling apart.
Yeah.
I don't think my mom had a good handle on us because she was obviously going through so much, adjusting to life on her own and with kids. We were probably not reacting the way she would have hoped. Jason
Well,
was sneaking out of the house and,
yeah. I mean,
it was rough. We put her through it.
I think that this is a little bit of like where I come from and my perspective is parents do this to kids. Kids
Mhm.
don't ask for divorce.
Yeah.
And to me, then the reality of everything else changing around you, I mean, to not have a concept of how much harder that actually makes the entire transition. I think I talked to somebody and they were saying how everything in their life stayed exactly the same. Their parents just split up,
Yeah.
but every single thing stayed the same in their life, and they thought that that was such a huge piece to their being okay, that it made them able to focus on, okay, we have to deal with this difference, but like they didn't feel unsettled in any other
Yeah.
way. Compare that to what you're saying, like every single thing in your whole entire life
Mhm.
changed, and
Changed.
it's
And to me, it felt like it was like I woke up in a different place.
instantly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Even
And
and
a
I look and I'm
kid.
like, I have to think like my mom has always been so like thoughtful and she's so calm and she's not a rash person. She's not someone who makes like crazy decisions overnight. She's not impulsive at all. So I as an adult I look back and I'm like, I know she had to made all these decisions
Yeah.
for her and also for her moving back to be close to her brother and her were so close. And I think for her, she was moving to be near a support system.
Totally, which makes sense, you get
Yeah,
it,
because
you
she had
know?
no one in California. She had my dad's family, and she had, yeah, friends, but my dad's family, and my aunt was out there,
Yeah.
my mom's sister. But yeah, so she moved, and my uncle was such a force. Like, he was one of the most amazing human beings, and he had been sick for years. My mom had donated a kidney to him
Wow.
when probably about 15 years before that, because it was a couple years before my brother was born. And he was like living on borrowed time. So I'm sure there's part of that too. She wanted to be with her people. I think Jason and I were probably really good kids for the most part up until that time. So I think there was also, she probably didn't see this stuff coming, you know?
Well, but you probably don't, as a parent,
No.
like, think of what we don't see coming, and then it's there, but I also think this is a huge example of parents making decisions upon divorce that are in their best interest, and it's not to say they shouldn't do that, but you have to see if you're doing that, the impact on your children. And it's now a secondary or third, like layered impact because you have that core impact of divorce. This family has already separated. And now you have these additional pieces that are happening. And as an adult, we're able to deal with things so differently. But when you put that kind of complication on kids,
Yeah.
and, like, to your point, so she's not from a family of, massive communicators.
Yeah.
So you're not getting the communication you need as this is all happening. It's I mean, that's really tough.
Yeah. It's probably one of the reasons I over communicate now to my kids, which is probably not the best decision to do sometimes. And it's funny because in so many ways, I never cared about not being part of, like, what was going on in the household or, like, not knowing certain things or something, but I think that was it felt so
Yeah.
done to me, like, it
Yes.
felt like it was done to me, and then afterwards was that ever I felt like that it just felt like I was in this I couldn't find my footing.
Right. Of
I just
course.
didn't
And you're
know.
young.
Yeah,
I mean, as you're saying this, I keep telling myself, "You're 10 or 11."
yeah.
It's not like you're 17,
Well, and I was
So
10 back in the day and age, right? Like, I didn't have you didn't have access to things, and not that I think it's good for kids to have
Right.
access to,
Right.
social media or any of these things, but at least there is I feel like kids do know so much more now, they're more aware at such a younger age, and
Yeah.
I even think kids communicate so much better, more openly. I think they're exposed to things, real life things. I mean, some things are not needed, but some things I think they're exposed to more things or bigger situations at younger ages now because
Yeah.
of what they see on TV or because and so this was still back in the day where it was like, barely watch TV and there was no internet and there was, everything was still very wholesome
Yeah.
and clean
You
for
know
the most
what?
part.
So phones is like a whole nother
Mm,
conversation. However, I would think that in a situation like that, had it been, current times and you had phones, the ability for you to have kept in contact with your friends or people in California may have helped just bridge that gap a little bit and not made you feel so abruptly out of everything. It also is gonna make you sad because 'cause you're not there, but I think that just having that connection
mhm.
might have helped a little bit. I think for kids who, for whatever their reason is, that they are ripped out of an entire existence when their parents get divorced, any contact they can have to that older world, just to give them comfort for even if it's like you eventually grow out of friends when you're young, you go
Yeah.
on, whatever, but for that transition period of time, that might have been something helpful for you, you know?
You're right. I just when you said that, I do remember writing letters. I don't remember to who. I know I did wrote some to my dad, and we would talk on the phone,
Yeah.
but it wasn't like every day. It wasn't but it was. I do remember talking to him on the phone. I remember writing letters. I remember there had to have been a couple friends I must have, but I wasn't calling friends that I remember and checking in with them. I don't
Yeah.
remember doing that. Um, so yeah, there wasn't the updates that kind of kept you
Yeah. Yeah.
to people.
So go ahead.
So that was definitely, I think, tough too, because then I'm in this new place with nobody to talk to other than,
Yeah.
these girls in the South are a whole other breed that I did not
Just
fit into.
lonely. Totally
Yes.
lonely.
And I
Yeah.
wanted to pal around with my brother at all times. And, he was like, at that age, like, stay away from me.
Yeah.
And
Absolutely.
so, yeah, definitely. And I wasn't involved in, I don't get, I don't think didn't get involved in anything like dance or anything out there quickly. So it was, it was, I started just getting in trouble. Yeah.
Yeah.
With the girls that like, not sneaking out, but like doing just dumb things. Like we would take golf carts and drive around and I'd get in accidents and like just
Oh my gosh.
my poor mother. Yeah.
So I know you ended up back in California.
Yeah.
So what came about there?
So then is when I really started to rebel. I think that was my like super active defiance. That summer, we were coming back because I guess my parents, I guess the custody, the visitation or whatever you call it, the
Yeah,
divorce
parenting
settlement,
time? Yeah.
parenting. I imagine that's what it was. So we were going to be coming back to spend the summer with my dad. Like we'd be staying with him for 2 months. And my mom was just going to stay with her sister and then we'd all drive back to Texas. So we were here or there in California we drove out, got to my dad's house, started staying with him. And it's not so much that I loved being at my dad's house. His house, he had bought a new house. It was great, but I remember it didn't really feel like home, but it was at least in California. So I had my brothers, all of them. I have 3 older brothers. So my brother Jason's the one we share the same mom and dad. And then my 2 older brothers are from my dad's first marriage. And so I got to see them again and I got to start seeing friends. And I remember I even got to see my 5th grade teacher. My dad had taken her with us to like a football game. So I got to see her. Like I got some more connection back. Got to see old friends and I was just like, I'm never leaving. I'm not leaving. And my dad just kind of said, if you want to stay, you can stay with me. And so I told my mom, I'm not going back to Texas. And so the funny thing is like me as a parent, I would have been like, that's not an option. We're going back. We can figure this out, but we're going back. But I think honestly too, that's maybe when I really realized that I had a voice because I stayed and I refused to go. And somehow I got to stay. I was like, I'm not going back. I'm staying with dad. I'm going to live with dad. He said I can live with him.
And what did your
And
mom do?
I think I broke her. It's still an issue to this day. She didn't go back to Texas either. She refused to leave without me. So
Well, is that breaking or is that just consequences of the decisions that parents were making?
it's interesting because for a lot of reasons that I won't go into, there was a lot I didn't know, obviously, because they're adult things. You don't need to know them. There's a lot I didn't know about the reasons for my parents' divorce. And so once I found out about things, I was like, oh my God, no wonder she never left. Okay. Like, so she stayed because she was also, I mean, then again, as a parent, I probably wouldn't have left my kid in another state either, right? Like, I would have been like, as a mom, yeah,
Yeah.
I think you and I are very similar in that way. Like, we're going to fight to the death for our kids, you know? And I think my mom's only way to fight for me was to say, okay, I have to like allow this, but I'm not going to, I need to be here if she ever needs me. Like, I
Yeah.
have to be close. So she never went back to Texas. So none of us ever went back to Texas. And my mom ended up having to sell the house. She never saw it again, ever. My uncle had to, people had broken in, stole stuff. My uncle had to go just like pack it up and sell it for her. And I'm sure she lost money. Then she struggled as a single parent in California, where we grew up in a very expensive place, but she wanted to be near me. So she stayed in Yorba Linda and she rented a house. And the funny thing is, it was smart because I did eventually go back to her, but only if she was in California. But I spent a lot of time with her. If I was sick, I wanted my mom. After school, I used to walk to her house every day. So I saw her a lot. I did live with my dad though for sixth and seventh grade and eighth grade. I might have stayed with him for 3 years.
Wow.
And I know I broke her. I know I did because
It was not an intentional thing you
no,
did. You were a kid dealing with the abruptness of everything that was done to you.
yeah.
You know what I mean? It wasn't like you just decided to do this.
She blamed my dad that he manipulated me and that he promised me all these things. And yeah, he promised me I could stay and I could see my friends and I could go to school with my friends and I could, I didn't have to go to Texas. I think the thing is that obviously she had a very, it's weird. I look back, right? And so one of the things that was a big deal in my parents' marriage was infidelity. And my dad had had affairs. So she obviously had some feelings towards my dad. But then if I ask her, even to this day, if I ask her about it, she'll say, we had a really good marriage. Our marriage was good.
Wow.
I know. I think
Interesting.
because in the same way, they did function really well together in the sense of their house and their finances and things were fine and their company was good. Like everything surrounding it was business partnership.
Right. And maybe like anything, think of your own life. When you get years away from an emotional thing, it doesn't seem as bad as it was when you were in it, and
Yeah.
maybe she's just so far from it that I think you kind of forget some of the pain,
Oh,
not
she
that,
doesn't now because as now she likes to make comments all the time.
wow,
And I'm like, it's been how many years? Like
wow,
he's dead. He's dead, and you're still upset about it. Like I didn't know my mom was such a grudge holder.
wow,
Maybe that's where I get it from. I would have thought it was from my dad's side, but nope.
so funny.
Um, but yes, my mom's side apparently is good at holding grudges.
Okay, wait, so you come back, you stay with your dad,
Hmm.
6th, 7th, 8th grade, then at that point, I would say life's probably more normal in whatever that looks like in terms of your mom's got a place, your dad's got a place, you guys are in the same town. You're in the same schools where you were before you went to Texas.
Hmm.
So how does then you get into high school with all of this that you've kind of gone through and you've had like your rebel moments, you've kind of gotten what you wanted in terms of
Right.
able to be back in a place that was stable for you, but you also stood up for yourself in an amazing way as a kid and felt that power that you could have.
Yeah.
How do you then, like, what do you see as you think back to high school and how you navigated it and how this may have impacted.
I should ask you. I don't know. How did I come off in high school? To be honest, to any listeners, yes, Shannon and I met in high school and we were very different, right? Like, and I still felt, honestly, I think the, the thing that's really kind of saved me was getting on the cheerleading squad because it was the first time I'd had something that really forced me to be like, it was grounding, it was mine, it was community for me. It was consistent, it was accountability.
Okay.
Um, it it made, and I liked it enough that I knew I had to stay out of trouble. I had to get my grades had to be okay. So I think that was big for me because I mean all through high school, but I really think I still felt very lost.
Yeah.
Things still Things were much more settled, right? Like, you're right, like, everyone was now in the same place, like, I forced them all to all be there. I forced everyone to be in California. But I was also dealing with, and I still struggle with it, I think I feel a lot of guilt because I chose to stay. Yes, that was my choice. I was a 10-year-old making that choice, which is kind of huge to say. Like, I look at my son, Ryan, who's 11, would I let him make a choice like that? Like,
Yeah, but
wow,
I think you have
But
to think of the circumstances,
yeah,
and it's really hard to watch you really beat yourself up for that because I divorced with a young child, and I think that I look at every single thing as consequences to my actions.
y
So, I think
yeah.
to let go of the fact that you stood up for yourself. What other 10-year-old is not gonna say, "I wanna be with all my friends?" You know,
Well,
and
and
I
for me too, I think the reason I feel guilty is because a lot of it did have to do with me wanting to be near my dad. I am the only girl in the family, and I did have a really great relationship with my dad. My brothers didn't so much. They had a much rockier relationship. As I got older, it got rockier, but I think I would stand up. I remember the one time I did, I stood up for myself, and then it got so much better. But there was a different relationship. I do think he treated me differently because I'm a girl. But I do think it's weird. So there was this I was he didn't spoil me, but I felt this need to be near my dad because he where my mom was, like, she was my rock, my foundation. Like, I knew she was steady. Like, I always knew she was going to be there. I always knew where I could find her. I always knew that, like, she would never, I don't know. She was just that, like, guiding light. Like, she was that. But my dad was affection, was warmth, was that comfort. So my mom was not demonstrative or communicative, and my dad was. And I needed that. And I will say I'm very glad that I did fight for that, and I did end up in California, and I did stay near him because I can only imagine, one, in Texas, the trouble I could have gotten in. But two, I think it's so important if you have a good relationship with both of your parents, especially as a girl, a teenage girl, like, knowing he was around,
absolutely.
and just knowing and having a father figure
But I think
as a
too
teenage girl.
I think what you're also demonstrating is this massive loyalty struggle
Yeah.
where, which again is what kids feel, but it's also where parents need to realize that and not put that on kids.
Yeah, and
Like,
I'm thankful. My parents never, never made me feel guilty. I think as I got older, I knew because my mom would sometimes she would blame my dad, but I felt bad because I knew it was me who made the
right,
decision. Now I look back, my dad just fought for me, right? Like, he fought
right.
for me because he knew that's what I wanted. My mom took it as, no, that's what he wanted. But there is that guilt because of loyalty, because I also saw what it did to my mom. My mom then really had to struggle in California.
Yeah.
My mom did have to not be near her family. It made things rough for my mom. Granted, it was her choice to stay, but I don't blame her. I'm glad she did to be
Course. I
near
mean,
me.
as a mother, you get it. It's like that's like
Oh,
the weird, you know what I mean? Like
mhm.
now you see the decisions from a mother's perspective and you
Yeah.
understand that. But like how funny you're like, I would never have let my kid decide, you know?
Yeah.
But the
But I
situation is
think
different.
that I also think, because I know, but I also know I understand my mom's reasonings behind it. I'm sure there's a lot. There's financial, there was emotional for her, there was what she thought she could give us a better life somewhere where she could afford it. So it makes sense to me. Like, I do get a lot of the decisions she decided to make to do that. But I do think that if I was to ever get divorced in the situation I'm in, right? Like, obviously, you've been divorced, totally different situation. I know I wouldn't move my kids away from my
Mhm.
husband, but that's because they do have such a good relationship with him. I wouldn't,
Yeah.
you know.
I mean, I think it's just realizing that. And I
Mhm.
think it's also realizing that like people can accomplish change after divorce, but
Yeah.
maybe abrupt ways are not the right way. Maybe slower transitions, communicating about it, like really, really kind of taking into consideration the fact that like I just, like I said, kind of blew up somebody's world.
Yeah.
And now I have to do everything I can to keep it peaceful. And we can make changes potentially later. Like life happens. Maybe your dad would have ended up moving his business or something like that. Like you have no idea what was going to happen. But the reality is, I think parents have to really understand that like, I am making this decision. I am doing this to my child. So,
Mhm.
how can I not layer upon them more trauma, more conflict, more
Yeah.
stress, at least for a while? And then maybe you make changes further down the road. Who knows? Maybe you guys could have ended up in Arkansas or Texas later and it would have been
Yeah.
fine. But
Yeah.
it just,
I
that
do
wasn't
think
the way to do it.
Yeah, I do think, like, I hear about people now, like, now that there's, like, conscious uncoupling, that whole
Yeah.
that whole thing. I do think, like, a lot of parents who now do that thing where they're like, "Okay, we're gonna keep the kids in the home, and you and I will,
Yeah.
go
Called
back and forth for a
nesting. Yeah.
while." Yeah,
Totally.
and I think, like, especially if it's a peaceful home and there's good memories there and all that kind of stuff, like, amazing. Yes, like, okay, there's this transition period. It doesn't have to be forever, but the transition period, I think I could have really, really
Absolutely.
done a lot with that for myself if there was a transition period. Like, and I think
Yeah.
looking
For
back, that
sure.
had to have been some of it, like, of me seeing my dad's apartment or me there had to have been something kind of, I just don't think it was enough,
Yeah. Well,
you
and
know?
nobody, it doesn't sound like anybody was telling you anything, and kids are going to make up,
Yeah,
or in your case, maybe they were, but it just was having no impact because you blocked it all out.
yeah,
And I think that's where it's about being like, okay, if we're making this decision to get divorced and we made this decision to have children, what is the nicest way we can unravel this and
yeah,
not cause them more pain? And that's where I get to, you've gotta be able to set yourself aside, as
yeah,
hard as that is, and I get it, like, that is a tall task to ask someone to set their emotions aside to truly do the right thing, like, that nesting, I think it's gotta be so hard to come in and out of your same house,
yeah,
but I can imagine, and I never would have considered that, my situation is different, but
yeah.
for people that I think that that actually would work really well for kids. I
I
think it's
think
minimal disruption that, but it takes 2 parents that are like, "Okay, I gotta totally check
yeah,
myself and do this for these kids for 6 months, a year, I don't know, however long until we are at a calmer vibration so we
yeah,
could do something
especially because
else."
now the kids then understand the custody in the sense, like the visitation, they're going back and
Yeah,
forth, or at least it gets them used to know during certain days you're only gonna have mom, during certain days you'll only have dad. This is how we'll show up together. I think that is huge if it's a good, peaceful environment and they can do it, right? Like obviously if it's a volatile environment,
no,
obviously if it's a situation where the kid does not have a relationship with a parent, that's different. But it's in my situation, I think that could have worked completely.
yeah, yeah,
Now, to be fair, looking back with my dad living in another room for a year, that was kind of happening.
But again, if someone had just been telling you,
Like, this is how it's going to be.
I talked to 2 girls where 2 sisters where their parents it was like a 4-year process.
Wow.
And it was so slow, but they think that that was one of the biggest things, and it was a lot of like, "Oh, your dad now has his own place, but he's gonna come and go all the time, but he's gonna kind of stay here." And it was just so slow that it was this transition that didn't feel, like, as jarring as it
Yeah.
could have been. And if someone had been communicating to you while dad was living on the couch for a year
Yeah.
that, "Hey, you know, he's gonna do this now," and I mean, who knows what the right way to present that is, but communication is definitely helpful, along the path of things changing, because kids just fill in the gaps when they
Yeah.
don't know,
Yeah.
or they
And
process internally that it's them or whatever,
I also think it could show a lot for like conflict management and, things
Oh,
that I think
tons.
linger. So like to get into like you asked me about high school and stuff, but even as an adult, like I think there are things looking back I know I wouldn't have done or I would do differently just because I know how it's shown up as a teenager and an adult, especially dating. Choosing who I married, choosing how, we run our house. Like there's just a lot of stuff that, it affects. So, and I'm sure, my mom, no, my dad's parents were still married. My mom came from a volatile home situation. And she had her mom and dad were divorced and then had a stepdad who was awful. So my mom was like, get out of the house. And my aunt was the same. She's like, my aunt really had to be raised by her stepdad. And he was mean and was like, I'm leaving the minute I can, kind of a thing. So they didn't come from but my mom comes from a long line of survivors on a farm, like they're not, it's just different. You just do what you
Yeah,
gotta do, you
yeah,
know? Um, so you also look back at those kinds of situations and how they were raised, and you realize they did the best, right, that they could have done.
right,
And so it's hard. Like I don't, you know, I also wish they'd gotten divorced earlier because I wish I could have seen my mom get remarried and be happy in a
yeah,
really good relationship.
yeah,
And I think because of the timing and then the kids and the situation stuff, that just she was never going to do that.
yeah. That probably would have alleviated a lot of your guilt that you carry if she had
Yeah,
ended up. Even though you have nothing to do with that, it's not your responsibility, but if that had been her end result, it probably would have tempered your feelings of responsibility because she stayed for you. She would have ended up with this, and that would have been wonderful for her, you
yeah,
know, in a way.
yeah. I think it would have helped specifically for that. I mean, I think I'll go to my grave feeling guilty for that. I know it's not my fault. I was a kid, but I just because I do see how my mom struggled after that I was like, "Oh, well, that's my fault." Like she didn't, but it was also her she stayed. But it is hard because those things do, you know, I think because I am very aware of I'm very empathetic and very aware, hyper aware of those kind of things that it made me very like I just always knew. And I didn't make it easier on her either. I did not make it easier on her because then in high school, I did move back in with her before freshman year because I was there with her freshman year. And like her and my aunt both say, like the minute the hormones hit, like the minute I started like going through puberty, they were like,
Oh, how funny.
and I'm not like my mom when it comes to being prim and proper and polite and quiet and a good Southern girl. Like I'm not. I think because I am so much more like my dad in a lot of ways, that was really hard on her too, because, she has a lot of hard feelings. And so for me to end up my personality to be so much more like his, that was tough. And then add in being a teenage girl
Yeah.
and high school, and I did feel very lost. I did still feel I had a very stable home. Both my parents had homes, but I was going back and forth. For a while, I would do back and forth on the weekends and stuff. Even when I was like, living with my dad, I'd go stay with my mom, or I'd be at her house all the time. I think I did that maybe part of freshman year, and then I was like, "I'm done. I'm done doing this. I'll just see my dad whenever I wanna see him. I don't need to go over there all the time." And they never from what I remember, there was never an issue with that. There was never an issue of, like, she needs to come pack a bag and stay here, like, it's
Yeah.
because we said so, like, that was never a thing. So, I'm thankful for that because I didn't feel like they didn't feel like they were fighting over things like that, but then it became very apparent to me of how uncomfortable it was to have them in the same room together anytime, and I distinctly remember that from high school. Sure, I saw that in junior high too, but it wasn't as big of a deal to me. I think it felt heavier when I got to be older. I think it also hurt because any of the big moments, like competitions or anything like that, I know my mom would show up when she could to some of them, but like they were never, my dad only showed up to the really big ones. And it was uncomfortable because then I was like, I knew he felt like an outsider. Then I always felt like, well, my mom knows more people here. And so she's, and then my dad's showing up. My mom and him are going to be weird. Mainly my mom is going to be weird to him. And then my dad always had to show up with his girlfriend. And so that made things even more awkward. And so there was always this uncomfortable dynamic. And it felt like my responsibility to always make everyone feel okay, which I hate.
Short of your parents getting along, what would have been easier for you though? Like think about when both parents want to like you have a good relationship with both your parents, so they both want to see you.
Mhm.
You couldn't make that go away. Would there have been another way to have them around or is communicating that feeling maybe something that would have helped? Like hear this a lot and I don't know what is the best way for parents to minimize that awkward, uncomfortable impact on their children when they're there for their children at something that their kids should be able to be present about.
Yeah.
Instead, they're not.
I think I find myself saying to my kids a lot, "Don't worry about it. It's not your problem. Don't worry about it. It's an adult problem. Don't worry about it. It's not your problem." Even if it's like about other friends, not your problem. You don't need to worry about it. You are a kid. That's an adult thing. Like even now, like if when my husband and I get in a fight, and it's not often, like we bicker like normal, but like once or twice a year, we'll get in a big fight. We had one recently where I was just like, and it got, I mean, ugly in the sense of like we were heated and the kids were sitting at the table. And it's weird because I know a lot of me is like, the kids shouldn't have to see this, right? But then a large part of me, because I never saw my parents fight, I have this thing that I'm like, no, it's good. It's good that they see us fight. We weren't being like ugly to each other. Like there was no name calling, anything like that. We were both just heated. We were both going to stand our ground on our thing. And where at the same time, I'm like, I never grew up in a house of fighting or yelling or anything like that. And now I'm like, oh my God, my kids grew up in a house where they can be like, yeah, my parents yelled at each other sometimes, But I also go, but the thing is, and the reason I guess I'm okay with it is because they also see us make up. They also see one of us apologize or both of us say, okay, sorry, I shouldn't have got that way. Right.
Yeah.
And even this last time, Reed asked me, like, I think it was like that night I was going to bed. He's like, are you and dad still fighting? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, "You haven't talked to him?" I was like, "No." And he's like, "Well, can you go talk to him?" I was like, "No." I was like, "'Cause I will when I'm ready. I need to calm down. I'm still upset." I said, "But Reed, don't worry about it. It's not your
Yeah.
problem. This is a mom and dad problem. It's an adult problem." And I say to him all the time, just like you and your brother fight because you guys get on each other's nerves because when you're around each other all the time, you're gonna fight. Parents do that too. And then we're gonna go have a conversation about it and we'll be fine.
Yeah.
You don't need to worry about it. This
I
is a
mean, it is
adult
teaching
thing.
them good conflict resolution skills and that you can be mad at someone you love and
Yeah.
then still love them and work it out and move on.
So
I think how you do it.
I think that's what one, and it's, they never, my parents didn't fight or anything, but I think that at some point someone should have said to me, like, it's not your problem. Don't worry about it.
Right.
It's not
Or
your
like, how
problem.
about just saying to you, hey, yeah, this might be awkward with both of us here, but we're okay. Like, we've got it handled because
But
we're
so,
adults.
the funny thing is that like my dad was always fine.
Yeah, I'm sure.
It was my mom's instant body language, and I knew she was not okay.
Yeah.
she was uncomfortable. And I felt very protective of my mom. Very. Or I still felt it's weird. I'm so loyal to both of them. I think too because my dad had started dating right away. It was with her. He married her. And so that was also a huge thing of contention. And she usually always came to everything. And that was hard because I did not have a good relationship with her then. And I think I took out a lot of my emotion about my parents' divorce towards her. But so then I felt overly protective of my mom. And my mom never make a comment or anything. It was just I immediately would feel her like kind of that like,
Well, if you
like
see
that
your
body language
empath
and
too,
tension.
yeah, you're feeling like some people don't understand what that means, but
Mhm.
I can understand what you mean. And when you feel other people's emotions, it is really hard.
Yeah.
It is incredibly hard to be next to someone who is seething or sad or whatever they are, and it's like it's on you. It's like a veil over you.
Yeah. I think I don't miss anything. I do have ADHD, so I think and that's a big part of it is that you don't miss a beat, like and it's the little things, right? So it's like even like and I think that's why, like, you put me in a room of people and I love being social, but it exhausts me because I do pick up on those things. It is every little nuance, every look, every little I don't even have to be looking at you, but yeah, you just it and I walk away feeling it, emotionally, I have to then process it. And so I think also because it's when I care about someone, if they're my people, like, it's even worse because I can see someone's angry and be like, "Oh, that sucks," whatever. But my mom, like,
Yeah,
it
totally different.
it would definitely affect me. It's so in that sense, it was hard. And it never ended. It never ended because, you
Were
know,
they at your wedding, both of them?
my mom and dad?
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
Well,
And
some
all
people
3
though,
of my
their
dad's
parents
wives.
and what?
All 3 of his wives.
Wow, that's amazing.
His first wife, my mom, and then my stepmom. Hmm.
Wow.
And that's weird for a lot of people.
Yeah.
Now, as an adult, um, you know, my stepmom and I are so close. She's one of my best friends. We talk all the time. My dad passed a couple years ago, and I stay very close to her. Um, we did have some tension around the wedding because everyone wanted their own part. They all felt entitled.
Yes, to you.
Yeah, and so there was, and I think that was the first time I really like said like I kind of stood up and I was like, "This is my wedding," and because I think that was the first time too. My mom was like, "I'm walking you down the aisle." I'm like,
Wow.
how many years is this gonna go on? Like, you guys divorced when I was 10. I'm now 30 something. Like, and I get it because my mom felt like she wanted to, I think too, because she knew I was gonna do a father daughter dance. Dads get all this attention. And she's like, but I'm the one who was there. I raised you. And if I
Yeah,
look back, yeah, of course, my mom was the one who was mostly doing everything, of course.
yeah.
But, she wanted her role to be bigger, to
She wanted
be
validation.
acknowledged.
Yeah,
Yeah. And but I was like, "But I'm the only girl." Like, this is the one thing I wasn't gonna take away from my dad, right?
yeah,
So I was like, "You are not walking me down the aisle,
right.
and you can meet us at the end, and both of you can give me away. But, like, you're not taking that from dad."
It's amazing though, it's yet another example. So it's your wedding,
Yeah.
and yet it's another example of everyone else's feelings at your wedding. And I completely understand where your mom is coming from. Like, you're
Yeah.
right. She
Yeah.
wanted that validation and all of that. But the fact that you, as you're planning your wedding, have to confront all of this all these years later again about something. And I just, it's like you said, 20 something years later, it's still something where you, in a way, are being treated like this child with these parents who need to have their role
Yeah.
like illuminated for everyone else, and it's totally different, but it's similar to in the midst of divorce, parents making decisions for themselves without really thinking about the layered impact on their children. And it's just another version of that, still as the parents in a moment that is completely your moment. And yes, I'm sure people will argue that it is a family thing and blah, 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 but it's your moment, it's your wedding, And so that's so fascinating. And good for you for coming up with a creative solution to give her a little bit of what she wanted, but also do what you wanted.
Yeah, I think because of the side of me that is super traditional, my dad being Mexican and being very traditional, um, and being very, being the only girl and stuff like that. There were things that I was like, no, no, look, if my dad had died before I got married, 100% I would have had my mom walk me down the aisle
Totally different.
before one of my brothers, otherwise I would have asked one of my brothers. But yeah, that's different. Now, I do think being a mom is a thankless job, right? So I do understand her feelings about it. I do understand, like, yeah, she wanted the validation, the acknowledgement that, like, and I think there's a lot of that, like, why does your dad get all this when I was the one who did majority of everything? But I think it's different because in like my brother's lives, it was a different relationship, but like than my dad and I had. Um, but it's hard because I do feel somewhat responsible for my mom's happiness.
Yeah, you totally do. And you shouldn't.
I shouldn't, but it goes back to that guilt, right? So there is that like period I felt bad that I was, but there was also I had to also have a whole thing about my stepmom because she wanted more to do with the wedding. I was like, you are not doing it. Um, but but at the same time, like I think that's the thing you learn as you get older, as you become an adult, right? Like every new journey your life embarks on, like just becoming an adult, and then when you very first start dating, and then when you get married and you have kids, like you start realizing, God, my parents were just human,
Yeah.
And even the best marriages are messy and awful sometimes and hard and amazing. But that's life. And, not looking back and just going, yeah, they were just two people with their own baggage trying to make the best decisions
Mhm.
at the time for what they truly thought would be best.
And probably with no or not a lot of external information. Like you think
Yeah.
of all the information, all the books, the podcasts, the therapists, the lawyers, everybody now who's talking about divorce and all the data out there that shows a million different things, whatever. Like when you get divorced, there's endless amounts of what you should do,
Yeah.
you know? Then there was probably not much, you know? And what you did get was kind of probably some stale, kind of very, you know,
Textbook.
textbook and very gender specific. Like, this is what moms get, this is what dads get. And there was
Mhm.
no, what's the relationship like? There was no, what is this kid like? Because
Yeah.
kids are dynamic and different, and we should be making decisions that align with who they are. Like you're like how you said, you get overwhelmed in certain circumstances. You feel deeply a lot of different things. Well, that could have explained some of your reactions to things,
Oh,
some
yeah.
of why you should have known ahead of time about things. If you're feeling that intensely, there's ways to help you manage that but again, that's supposing that everybody understood all of this back then and it's just come out more, as we've gotten more information. But I
That
want
and I would say, but also that and knowing that, like, I was a kid that probably needed to talk it out. I really did. That's how I
absolutely.
process
Yeah.
things. I talk. I talk about it until I finally I'll talk everyone's ear off about every little thing, and then I'm like, "Okay, now I don't have to worry about it anymore."
Yeah.
And my mom's not a talker, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah.
And then there's also stuff that you go, "Gosh," but there's a lot of stuff that they don't. I'm glad. I'm really, really thankful my parents did not tell me all the nitty-gritty details. I mean, not that it was,
Yeah.
you
You
know
don't need that. No.
no. So I'm glad they didn't tell me too much, right? But also I think, yeah, there was a need for more letting me process it.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, is there a moment that you think back and you feel like there was a shift, like where it was really raw, really intense, but at some point, and I mean, it could have been 15 years later, it could have been never, it could be, yesterday, but do you feel like there was a shift where you were like, okay, I'm going forward differently now, and what you did to maybe get there?
I think there were moments I had at different times with each of my parents that definitely changed our relationships. I feel like from the divorce aspect and just kind of like that stuff, it was more no, it was more I think there was a bit of a shift, obviously, at some point when and maybe it was when my mom bought a house in California. So she had rented a place for a little while, and then she ended up buying a house in California. So I was like, "Okay, now she's putting roots down." So, like, we're all I remember feeling a little more settled then, um, and that's about the time I moved back in with her. So that was a good shift for me. I think I felt a little bit more like status quo.
Stable, yeah.
Yeah, but I think as an adult, there were 2 pivotal moments I had with each of my parents that I feel like I feel like it was a moment I needed for them to be like, "No, you need to see me. Like, I'm also now an adult." Like, and they were both not fights, arguments, but it was the first time my dad and I my dad was not one to say sorry or like, he would talk, he would communicate a lot, but it wasn't gonna be like about, you know and I was pregnant and, we got into a big fight about something, and it was the way he talked to me. He said something to me, and I was like, "No." I think maybe too because now I have a husband, and my husband's like, "No one's gonna talk to my wife that way," and my husband's very different. It's funny who I married too because he's so the opposite of a people pleaser. He is so the opposite of making sure everyone feels okay. He's very good at his own boundaries, and that is something I needed to learn because I put everyone else first, and I didn't know how to make good boundaries. So I think that was a big deal because I think that was it. That was the first time I put down boundaries with both my parents, and one was when I was pregnant with my first son, and my dad and I got into a fight. Well, we got into a fight. I didn't talk to him for months, and I think I even skipped Christmas. Like, I was like, "Nope, not going." Like, I was just like, I finally held my ground. I think that's where the stubbornness comes in. Might not have been the best way to totally do it, but I was like, "I have to prove my point, right?" So finally, I realized and I told my stepmom, so I was still talking to her, I was like, "If he doesn't apologize to me, like, he owes me an apology." And I held my ground on it, and then I finally had to call him. So I was like, I'm pregnant, and I'm gonna have this baby, and I have to be the bigger person, and I gotta tell him that he's gonna have a grandchild." And I remember calling him to tell him, and it was one of those, like, I finally said to him, I said, "Look, I'm having this baby," and, I was still pretty early on, but I think it was, like, we kinda knew I was safe and stuff. Like, the baby's gonna we're probably gonna get through this pregnancy. So I called to tell him, and it was one of those, like, "If you want to be a part of my life, you are never speaking to me that way again." And he did apologize, and he cried, and he apologized, and it was a big moment because he never did treat me that way again in the sense of the way because he had a tendency to kind of be condescending at times, and when he wanted to prove a point or he thought he was right, right? So he never did that again. Like, it was like all of a sudden, it was just like not even playing field. I was still a child, but I drew a boundary, and that was a big changing point for him and I. And my mom and I had a this is way more recent, that we had a moment that there was a there was an argument that we got into, and she got very heated. And it's funny because she doesn't remember it the same way I do, like, she doesn't remember, but and for me, I think it was such a big deal because my mom's, like, never we've never fought. I've yelled at her when I was in high school and stuff, but she's not someone to raise her voice or to she's very calm and even keel. So for her to get heated about something and yelled at me, and then it was so uncalled for in the way it happened. It was in front of my kids, and I was like, so we didn't talk. And my aunt kind of had this explained to her, like, what, you need to look at both sides of this, and so she actually, for the first time in her life, came and apologized to me.
Wow.
And it's probably one of the few only times she needed to. I mean, my mom hasn't done a lot that she's ever really needed to apologize to me for, but she did, and I think that was a big changing point because now the way we communicate is a lot different.
Wow.
But I had to set a boundary. I was like, "No, we're not doing this. Like, this is not gonna happen." And so those were really big moments. And it's funny because it's like, what, I'm 40 something now. Like, it took that
Yeah,
long,
they're recent. Yeah.
but it definitely shifted our relationship and
Yeah.
dynamic. And then I will say there was a moment with my parents that changed. And it was it was my son's second birthday party, my oldest son's second birthday party. And we were at my mom's house. And we were having a little, family party that day. So of course everyone was invited. And my dad he'd been sick. He had had prostate cancer, and so he had a lot of kind of weird things going on. He had gotten through it and everything, but he was definitely different after, and I don't know if he had already had the second. He had it twice. But during all of his health stuff, he just changed. He was different. He was just different. And that day, so I noticed all of a sudden he started asking me if he could help me clean up. And I was like, something wrong with you because you've never cleaned a thing in your life. Like, what are you doing? Like that's not something you would ever offer to do. So he was just different. And then my mom said she found him outside staring at the house, her house, and being like, "What's that door over there go to?" And she was like, that's my neighbor's house because a townhome." And she was like, "That's my neighbor's front door." And she told me that night, she was like, "Something was really weird with your dad yesterday. Like he was very confused about this and that." And we started piecing it together. Ended up, he had dementia and he hadn't been diagnosed yet, but there were these little signs. But that was a moment that I distinctly remember because my mom, I think, started to have empathy for him. And it wasn't this like, she's not the type of person at all to make fun of someone or anything. She's not mean spirited at all. But she, because she still has very big, harsh feelings, I think, about everything, she would, the way I see her process it, and it would just be more closed lip, like,
Yeah.
more than
Yeah.
anything.
Yeah.
And it was the first time she was like, it was really like, I could tell she cared. I could tell that she was kinda like, "It was really odd behavior, and it was not like your dad." And I was like, "Yeah, he asked me to clean, and he helped me clean up." Like, that was, he walked around and, like, picked up dishes and stuff. It was so strange. And then his illness progressed, and it was, and I think it softened my mom in a way because she saw him struggling. And then especially her knowing that, like, especially when he was really bad with it, like, I think it was like I think there was a piece of her that
Yeah.
truly cared.
Yeah.
And so that was a big shift because those last few years, it was different.
It was probably what would have been a wonderful thing way earlier on. If there was somehow they could have gotten to that or she could have gotten to that without it having to be
Yeah.
something reminding you that people are all mortal.
Yeah. I think I think it would have been, and honestly, for me, it's like I wish for her, right? Like,
Yeah, totally.
my dad got remarried. He, moved on. I just feel like, yeah, her life experience, it shattered her life experience, I feel like, in a way. And it's funny, I don't know if she even feels it. Like, I don't know if she feels that way. Like,
Yeah, I mean, you assume all of that, but
I
you
do.
don't know actually.
I don't. I mean, she dated someone for years.
Yeah.
Wouldn't commit to him, you know? Now, granted, I look at it, I go, yeah, I totally get it. Why would she ever get remarried again? Like,
Yeah.
especially kids are now grown, like, whatever, like,
Yeah.
I get it. She likes being independent. She likes her own space and her things her own way if she doesn't have to, right? Like, there's things as you get older, you're like, oh yeah, I could totally do this. Like, it'd
Yeah.
be nice to have companionship though. Um, but I do feel like it made life harder for her, and
Yeah.
that's what was tough.
Hard for you. Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you think of and then we can wrap up. But can you think of something that came from all of this that was a positive impact on your life?
Um, this is gonna sound, oh my god, if my mom ever hears this, she's gonna be so mad. Honestly, I mean, because I'm glad that my parents didn't even though I would have loved my mom to either get remarried or at least, like, life been a little, because she had to struggle, single mom, Southern California, you know? I wish that would have been easier for her, but I am happy that they did not. I'm glad she didn't stay with him and just settle, like, for something that she didn't want or
Mhm.
wasn't, they obviously did have issues and it wasn't fair to her. But I will say that I do believe everything happens, God has plans for us. Everything happens the way it's going to and supposed to. And, because they got divorced, I have a stepmom, and that now I wouldn't have said this in my teens, but I mean, I hated her. So I cannot believe like how far we've come. Like I have someone in my life that is a truly God-given person to me, and my kids and my family. I mean, and I know my mom would hate me for saying that, but that only as an adult specifically, like really, it was total blessing to me. And I have a little brother that my dad ended up. He's a stepbrother that was 3 or 4 maybe when they got married or they met, and he's only been raised with us, and it gave him family, and it's like, and he and I are so incredibly close, and now I have my nieces and nephew from him, and like, my family got bigger,
Mhm.
which is a blessing, and I hope my mom would understand that only because, my mom was his second wife, and she's very close to my dad's first wife, which is why Isabel, my dad's first wife, has always been in my life, and, they see each other, they sit in the corner and they talk and they hug and they laugh and they have a margarita and they're friends. And my mom has 2 other stepsons that call her mom and they love her. And so I feel like in the same way, like I hope she would understand that because she got them in the same way that, I'm so thankful for Isabel because I have older brothers. And
Yeah.
um, so I think in that way, like even at my dad's funeral, I told one of my brothers, I was like, look, my brother had a lot of hard feelings with my dad's death. They had a rough relationship, one of my oldest brothers. And I said to him, I said, but look around because if it wasn't for that man right there, you wouldn't have me. You wouldn't have all these people. You wouldn't have Jason and me and my little brother, all because of him
Yeah.
and his imperfectness is why we have each other. I think the family that I've gained from all of my dad's marriages is the biggest blessing.
Well, I mean,
I wouldn't
family,
change that.
yeah, that is the most beautiful thing.
Yeah.
To be thankful for all the people that have come from it and
Yeah.
that they all make your life better. I mean, that's a pretty big gift, you know?
And I do think that I had a different relationship with my dad, a much better and closer individual relationship with him because they were divorced. Because
Yeah.
if they were together in the way that they were married, I think even though our home was calm and everything was fine and they got along and they worked together, I think I would have, yeah, I had a relationship with them, but I don't think it would have, I think there would have been a barrier because of course my mom would have been the one doing everything with us and taking us everywhere and there would have been a bigger divide in a sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I had the chance to create my own relationship with him that I think was very individual and much stronger. And so I think that was probably a good thing for me, just, being a girl and at that time in your life too. Like,
Absolutely.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I feel like we could keep going on and on, but
Yes.
I want to be respectful of your time and just I cannot thank you enough for unraveling all of this for me. There are so many things that you've said that I think will resonate so much with the way that people struggle to do it now and why different things matter. As something so small as just recognizing that you might have a kid who needs a little more information. Like That doesn't cost anything. That's not hard to do. If you don't know how to do it, you can consult a therapist. But kids, so often I feel like they're treated as if they don't know anything and they can't
Yeah.
process
And they
anything.
can't. Yeah.
And the reality is they're processing everything and they're making up their own version and their own story. And none of that is probably right. And it's making everything harder in a lot of cases. And so it's just one example, but I feel like you have so many that you just shed light on. And I really can't thank you enough for like going back through all of that for me. It really meant a lot.
Well, you're welcome. It's so interesting to look at it as an adult, to look back.
Yeah.
I would definitely say that, like, if I was to ever get divorced, and I pray to God we never do, but if I was, I think it would affect the way that I do look at the way I show up,
Hmm.
because I always knew that, like, if for any reason I got divorced, I would show up to every single event where we had to be together, even if they were hard feeling, like, if,
Yeah.
and make I would hug him. I would include anyone he was dating. I would make them feel like they're my best friends, and even if inside it was killing me, for my kids' sake, because I know that was just rough. That was just, and I was in a very calm, like, no one ever fought. It was just that I think any way you can make it a little easier and take, so those kids don't have to feel any responsibility for it, they
Yeah.
could just still stay kids, is what I really learned from the situation.
Absolutely.
And putting your emotions aside,
Yeah.
I imagine it's hard.
And I mean, that's why I'm talking to you because I feel like people in these situations need to hear it from a person who lived it. I think that you can read it in a book, your lawyer can tell you what's right, a family therapist can enlighten you, but I think at the end of the day, the most impactful thing is to hear why
Yeah.
from someone who actually went through it and to see that impact and to see how it evolved as an ongoing impact. It just doesn't happen and then the kid gets
Yeah.
better. It's an ongoing thing, especially if parents never pay attention to it. So,
Well, I know, because it's also gonna affect, as the person getting divorced, it's gonna affect your life and all your future
absolutely.
decisions. And when there's kids involved, it's just, it's bigger because now they have their rest of their lives to however this affected them to
Yeah.
show up. And I think it's hard because, like, I don't think anyone makes decisions they think are gonna hurt their kids or their futures in ways, right? And no matter what you do and the best way you do it, no matter what,
Of
you're gonna
course.
make there's no
Yes.
perfect way. But yeah, I love that you're doing this in order to help people try to make a little bit better informed decisions and taking their situations into effect, and their specific children into it and all that stuff. So that way, yeah, hopefully there are better outcomes
Yeah.
for everyone.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, thank you so much. I
Thank
really
you.
loved talking to you.
I love talking to you too.
All right. Well, have a good rest of the day.
Okay.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Thanks for tuning in. Together we can shape healthier paths for families to do divorce better. See you next time on In Between Them.